How about this storm for you? The Justice Department taking a pound of flesh from another big bank involved in the housing crisis. Citigroup's time at bat, the nation's third largest bank, will pay that humongous number, $7 billion. They had started out at $300 million, I think Charles Payne just told me.
That's what their negotiating point was.
That's where they started. The deal settles a federal investigation into risky mortgage bonds that were sold ahead of the crash in 2008. Everyone remembers it well. Attorney General Eric Holder called this deal appropriate.
In addition to the historic $4 billion penalty assessed against Citi, this resolution also includes $2.5 billion in relief that will be provided to those homeowners and communities affected by the bank's fraudulent activities. Now, this assistance has become a must-have element in our agreements with banks that contributed to the mortgage crisis.
Bad, bad, bad banks. Charles Payne is the host of Making Money with Charles Payne on the Fox Business Network. What do you think about this deal, Charles?
Well, how magnanimous that maybe homeowners who might have been hurt should get a piece of the action. Yeah. Did you listen to the press conference? Out of $7 billion, we'll let the homeowners get $2.5 billion. After all, they should get something.
Wouldn't that be nice?
We're going to take the lion's share of this money. There's so many narratives to this thing. It really is. It's outrageous on every single level. It really is.
So the banks get punished for something that was really a triangle. In order to make this housing crisis happen, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you had the banks, you had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who have been scot-free in this, enabling this whole situation, and then you had homeowners, some of whom should never have signed up for the mortgages that they got.
Right. There's no doubt that when we frame the homeowners as victims, when you go look back, that's really not, a lot of these homeowners weren't victims. A lot of people, they got suckered in by adjustable rate mortgages. A large portion lost their homes before the rate mortgage even changed, while they were still paying the teaser rate. A lot of them put no money down. But let's just say, there are some legitimate people who were stiffed in one way or the other. One critical element, though, that's not on your triangle, the federal government. The Community Reinvestment Act, which goes back, Bill Clinton actually took this and actually bolstered it, and all these presidents use it because it's great to be a president and say, hey, home ownership is up under my watch.
Absolutely.
But people need to understand that these banks are national banks, and the federal government says you cannot go from state to state if you don't make loans to certain people. So they held this threat, and then to make it easier for the banks, Fannie Mae became like this sort of Yucca Mountain, where you put nuclear waste, but except this was toxic waste. So now you have a way of writing these mortgages, combining them. You can sell them to each other, but ultimately a big chunk of them ended up in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac didn't get punished. In fact, the leaders, the people who ran, Franklin Reigns and others, left with huge bonuses as they went out the door.
He gets $1 million a year for life, I'm pretty sure.
$1 million in taxpayer money a year for life. So where is Eric Holder on that issue and that part of the equation? Because obviously the banks are paying many, you would say, I think, more than their share, right?
When they started discussing this, Citigroup came and said, okay, we probably were wrong. We'll pay $300 million. Okay. $7 billion from $300 million. That's pretty wide distance. And, the only other part of this that should bother people, particularly if you're a shareholder of these banks, they paid now up $100 billion. They're very close to it. Why? Why? I know lawyers' fees are pretty expensive, but we're talking $100 billion. And, some people might be rankled that no one goes to jail. That these same banks could get bailed out with taxpayer money, then later on be used by the government for all of these settlements. They never seem to stop coming. And the one part of the equation that's always missing is no one is ever truly held accountable. If something was this egregious, if something was this wrong, if somebody was ripped off to the tune of $100 billion, it seems like, maybe we can get one or two people out there.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. Charles, thank you very
Thanks a lot.
much. Charles Payne.